be, like my voice is louder than the speaker. Okay, here you go.
Okay. Identity. 1A, the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. B, the relation established by psychological identification. 2, the condition of being the same with something described or asserted. 3A, sameness of essential or generic character in different instances. B, sameness in all that constitutes the objective reality of a thing. 4, an equation that is satisfied for all values of the symbols.
Hold on. So how many people are in here? There's like a lot of people in here looking at me right now. This is great. How many of you in here understood this definition? How many of you in here like this definition? I only see one hand. So for both those questions, I actually really appreciate reading definitions. The definition comes from the Oxford English Dictionary because it is a good way to understand what it is we are talking about when we try to attempt to communicate with each other. The reason why I'm going to go on this tangent is going to be clear in a minute. I'm going to let you continue your things. Yes.
Why this? We think a lot about how the tools we create affect how we interact with the world. In fact, I would dare to say, the tools we use define us. So we came here all the way from Hawaii, and we've been asked a lot about our daily lives, mostly about living in the tropics, fruit, surfing. She spearfishes. Her breath record is what, like 3 minutes?
No? 2 minutes.
2 minutes? That's pretty long. But the thing that I like to bring up is nothing very exciting. It's what I like to call the flyer phenomenon. And so in our community, poster boards are a really big deal. Around town, if there's a poster board anywhere, people stop and read the flyers. This is how everybody gets informed about the events going around town. So we wanted to create something that will remain ambiguous until Frankie comes back on stage, that we can implement in a events app for our island. Because right now people either use poster boards or Facebook events. So we first off, we want to get people off Facebook. Secondly, we want secure communication. And we want to reflect human traits in the software that we create. Thirdly, or fourthly, we wanted to represent who we are as people in our local community.
Okay, that's where I come in and I start to talk about seeds. Obviously, we're in the developer tools track, so there's a reason why we're in the developer tools track. We're currently working on a library called Seed, which is a key manager. And a lot of it is like, I would love to have a key manager library that is easy to use, that is very lightweight, that does not prioritize Ethereum, that allows me to have multiple keys under different curves so that I can sign and broadcast messages on different protocols. I started off by writing some pseudocode. It's like some example code of how I want it to look like. And I'm currently writing it out so that it matches this example, because I wanted it to be simple, and it's a lot harder to write your things to match your docs than it is to write your docs after you've written the library. It's also hard to write docs. This is like a basic overview of what the API is going to look like. And I'm going to go through this really quickly because I actually don't particularly care for the speaker audience style. I would really much more appreciate if you're interested to ask questions, help me understand, or that I can answer to help you understand what I'm working on. The seed class will take, oh, this is written in JavaScript for those of you who maybe didn't catch that in the beginning or I didn't make that clear. The seed class will take a key type. The interface for the key type is sign, encrypt, decrypt, new, and if available, recover. I got a lot of the style in which I like to write my code from reading other people's code. I really liked this example. This is SBot, which is the SSB server, which is a lot of the API is based around depject. If anyone is familiar with what that is, my guess is not, given the looks on your guys' faces. Depject, I think if you ask Dominic, he'll say today that he thinks it was like a failed experiment, that you shouldn't, that if you ever have to, it's like modules are like drugs. If you have to inject your drugs, you're doing something wrong. But this pattern made a lot of sense to me. And these were built to better represent plugin style architectures where it was fluid and easily repurposed and lightweight and not heavily opinionated. I also really want to emphasize that it hasn't, like it should have a pretty, it has a very simple API for choosing the storage. I wanted to make it storage agnostic so that you could use it in the browser. If you so decided, you could use it in a server, but it is definitely created more for client-side browser applications. At least that's why I'm writing it. Oops, that was not, I wanted to go back. A little bit about us. I'm Frankie. I like to leave that for last. I really enjoy the concept of key management as a part of an identity or representation of a person, because what more do we really need to be? And I would like, the point of this for me is that, like, yes, we are trying to build an events application at some point in my life. That is what I would like to do, because this is what everybody keeps telling me the reason why they're staying on Facebook. I really just want to get my, like, cousin who's like has a band, who the only reason why he uses Facebook is because his band posts events on there. That to me is incredibly disturbing, that is like the most common thing people keep telling me. And so this is the first piece that I need to build. And it's the piece that I very well know. And now I'd like to open up the floor to, like, first of all, I didn't cover anything in this description. And I'm hoping you guys like have questions and want to know more about this. Yeah? No? You do? Want to know more about this? Does anyone have a question?
How do you see this? How do you get your private keys?
The idea, thank you, because I don't talk about that. The idea is that you actually are not importing and exporting private keys, that you use this is the word. You can generate a mnemonic inside Seed. You can get the mnemonic out, but if anyone ever looks at the word mnemonic and how it's spelled, you will appreciate why I'm laughing at myself right now.
I like to say mnemonic.
Oh yeah, now that you've heard it, you'll never unhear it. So it will generate a mnemonic, or you can provide a mnemonic, and then we will, like, if optionally you can store the seeds or the private keys generated from the seed in disk, but you can always just only store them ephemerally if you never want to go to disk directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like what's the problem now? Unless like people who really do carry around Bitcoin or Ethereum, like there's this whole market for like physical blocks that sure like you keep your key only on those USB sticks, which I think is not too bad of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine it's somewhere in memory, like all kinds of stuff can happen with that. You're like, well, is that something you think you would like to get to it, but this is like the sort of convenient route first, or like or is that something do you think like the USB stuff is garbage?
I don't think the USB stuff is garbage. I think it has a place. What I'm trying to emphasize here is actually more, if you notice, like, I didn't emphasize Ethereum keys in my example, I emphasized SSB keys. And part of that is because I really hope that, like, you do have that hardware wallet, But I also would like to see proxy accounts become more popularized. And so my goal for this, and like the reason why I want it is because I want to be able to generate keys in multiple curves and sign one message with all those keys. And that will help me do my interpretation of state channels, or what I would call a state channel. And so my best example is if I was going to go see a band, like go to a show, then I would want to reserve the ticket, pay for the ticket, and tell the theater or the venue that I'm going. And I would like to do this all with one particular key. And so that transaction should all be done with one particular index of the seed. And then that index should be discarded once the transaction is complete. At least this is what I would like to attempt. So granted, this is the first step to that. So I'm not sure how well that's going to go in the end.
Is there a connection like to an HP wallet, this kind of idea where you can firmly create new private public key combinations that still belong to you, but you like use them only one time, so you
So far, am I making sense or am I going around in circles? I think I'm getting yeses. Good. Yes, Joel.
Question about the abstraction level.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of put in the key type as key, and this is key.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's the right abstraction, like the curve, because there's going to be like.
Oh yeah, no. In the actual repository itself, I do just have the names of the curves, but obviously in an application that I would write, I would probably call those ETH and SSB.
So those are like wrappers of the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for doing that is that at some point, the idea is to not just have this key manager, right? I would like to also build libraries that help manage your endpoints or the way you communicate to those networks. And then I would like to collect some form of figuring out like what the messages themselves are composed of. So for example, in Ethereum transactions, as we all know, have like a nonce and gas and so on and so forth. But on another example, like an SSB message contains a form of something like nonce. And it would be nice to have all of this collected in one space so that you can iterate between them, like choose which standard you're going to, or like which protocol you're going to use and formulate the messages that way. I want to make it really easy for myself to just like have a template for building applications using different protocols. Personally, because I don't necessarily want to do everything on Ethereum. I think SSB has done a really great job of making connections to similar like things that have a relationship. It also has like a very interesting and intelligent user base, which is always a good sign, and a large community of open source developers. And they're like figuring out how to do social identities, I guess, in a way, very well. And they have thought about how to do like group communications and things like that. That being said, they're not very good for, like, if I could build my own SSB client, I would probably not store content in those messages and they would just be pointers to something on DAT or IPFS.
So if you like support multiple different protocols, or like this interface of like you have a sign function, like when different protocols like need different functions for their different.
Yeah. So far, obviously, because I have like a bias of which particular protocols I want to work with, these are the methods that I've come up with so far. Do you know of another protocol that would have a different need outside of, or like inside its key management that I could take a look at just for?
Sure. Like, have you looked at like the Joe says that, so like KWTs and JWTs, like encrypted objects? It's like from the IETF, they're like creating standards for like how you code signed and encrypted messages. Like those types of things might be interesting, but I don't know like how that would fit into it.
Go on.
Just to add to that, I guess the digest is usually something that you might keep variable. Then Ethereum is like catch-up version of the SHA-3, but then like if you have more than one chain, like they like to use different digest because it's pretty Ethereum. Like normal, like standard SHA-3 or some SHA-2.
Sorry, I'm making a note of that in my head. Thank you, by the way. Does anyone else have questions or want to hear more things?
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, please.
What do you think like of the integration? Like, do you think this is something that you would ship with your application, or that should turn into a plugin like MetaMask, or should it be working with MetaMask together, or like what? How do you see that?
That is a great question. Ideally, what I will do, and I have created all of the libraries that my heart so desires, I would like to create a scaffold of some sort that will allow people to easily create things like MetaMask, along with creating applications that do their own key management. That is my intended use for this library. It could go in a plugin or a snap in MetaMask. However, I don't like it would be, yeah, it could do that.
Like in your application, as you said, like for the events for rock bands, for example, like do you like this cross or the signing in into so many different applications is always difficult, and like if signing in is like a mnemonic, then you definitely like want to decrease the amount of times I have to enter my mnemonic. Right? When I switch between one front-end app to another front-end app to another front-end app, kind of where MetaMask helps you because it's like the same across. Like, but how?
Yeah, I want to create. I want to create this under the intention that this should not be taken as seriously as MetaMask. That your keys, like sometimes you don't need serious keys. Sometimes you need like ephemeral keys that are loosely treated as tokens for those applications, and some applications can share that. And my intent is to create a scaffold that uses a service worker, but if you were to like store, like I do not recommend it as something that you would store a large amount of funds in or anything more than just to pay a little bit of gas sometimes. I think that it would be useful as like a way for applications to share a sense of login, but UI is not going to be my priority right now. I really just want to get like interacting with the network and the key management very solid. And even if it just means that for a while it's only like playing around with like storing a username that all applications can share, then that in and of itself makes me think I've achieved something. And then we can go into like, how do we deal with now storing like a global key shared by applications that stores a lot of Ether or DAI or something like that. Does that answer that question? Maybe. Hopefully. Sometimes I can get on these like little bit tangents where I get like stuck on a specific word. So if I do that, you feel free to re-ask the question.
I was just wondering, like, if I use a library, like, would it come up with its own pop-up, or like, if it's to enter the amount of money, but how far you go down this path, or would it turn to plugin, like, kind of like
yeah, as I go down this path, yes, one day there will be UI for it. Up until that point, like I really would find it more interesting to start with the little things and getting those little things down before going into something where we go into like real, like authing applications. I think that UX is a hard problem to solve, and I will say that like MetaMask has done a really good job at solving this hard problem. But I think that it's also at the same time as we like ask for all these permissions and MetaMask is getting used as a login, it is overcomplicating a very simple step. And
I completely agree. Like,
yeah.
You said it's good, like the UX, like, it's a big problem.
But like a lot of the times, like a lot of these applications are getting a MetaMask pop-up right at the start because it's just literally trying to do a simple login, which I do see as a problem, because at some level, like that amount of verification is necessary, but is that amount of verification necessary for each like particular problem that every developer is using it for. I have a hard time understanding sometimes like why we use, I have a hard time understanding why MetaMask is being used as a login, because okay, let me back up. I don't have a hard time understanding it. I just think that there are better ways of which we can do it. Smaller ways that aren't conflated also with a very public bank account. So anyways, are there any other? No? Cool. Great. I guess I'll finish with thank you very much. I very much appreciated that you guys participated in my favorite social experiment of me doing talks. And yeah, just go all the way to the end. Ha ha. Thank you.
Thank you.